Sal Capaccio joining us here on the Western Hotline to chat about some Bills moves. Sal, did you think about this at all when I don't know if you saw the story, Pat Shurmur saying they liked Josh at number 2 that year, and
they couldn't get Gettleman.
They couldn't get Gettleman to do it. The GM was so in love with the idea of taking Saquon Barkley. You know, what would the Bills have done in that spot? It's a tough question because I don't know what they would have done.
I don't either. No, I did not see this happen. I remember there was something about Josh Allen and Shurmur at the time, and how like Shurmur had made a comment that kind of didn't sit well with the Bills or Josh Allen about it, and there was never really any clarity on why.
He said he has.
You guys remember going back to that time?
He has a chance to be a starting quarterback. Or something like that. He said, I liked him. I thought he had a chance to be a starting quarterback. And there was a little bit of is that an insult? You know, everything's turned into bulletin board material.
Maybe now what we're learning is, by this story, he's trying to say, yeah, I thought that, but the other guy didn't. Or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The GM didn't. Who knows? Let me see. 2018 draft, I think. I mean, Mayfield, Barkley, Darnold goes 3. I really don't know. It's a good question, guys. I mean, maybe it's something we could, we could find out as we go forward. Maybe something you can ask Brandon Beane when he's on training camp with you.
Do you agree with us, though, that like the least likely scenario would have been that they picked Rosen?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think Josh Rosen was the type of quarterback they were looking for. Who knows? I mean, maybe they just had faith in like, hey, we're going to be able to make it work with any of these guys. We got to find someone. But yeah, it just feels like he wasn't the kind of guy they were looking at.
Right, because
there was a lot of talk about Mason Rudolph that year. Remember that?
Yes.
I don't think it would have gone number 7. They would have traded up for him. But remember, there's a lot of talk about maybe Mason Rudolph could be a guy who would fit.
Maybe their second first-round pick, or maybe their second. Because to me, really, the exercise is, and you can't really know. And I don't think we would know this answer until they're both done playing. But the question for me is, would they have picked Lamar Jackson? Because then your history is still pretty good.
Yeah.
You might think it's different, but you would expect that if they had done that, they would still be in really good shape. Whereas if they had picked Rudolph, then like who the heck knows?
Yeah, we can ask Beane 10 years from now.
Yeah, they have to be done playing.
Everybody's got to be retired. Everybody's got to have Super Bowls, and then you can say, "Oh yeah, I mean, I have no idea what we would have done. Maybe we take a guard."
Right?
Who knows?
Well, because he might not get to that.
We always.
Sorry, go ahead, Sal.
Yeah, sorry. We already know too that like the Broncos could have taken Josh Allen, and they weren't going to trade with the Bills if there was a guy there and they didn't know who the guy was. Well, it was Bradley Chubb. So we always had that conversation too. So it's the same thing. One of the Broncos said, no, we got to take Josh Allen, but they stayed in 5 and they took Bradley Chubb instead.
This happens a lot too, where like when the guy becomes elite, everyone wants to line up and tell you, "Oh, I knew."
I agree with that.
I knew. Like there was a Seattle story a couple years ago how Pete Carroll had said, or maybe it was the GM, that they had offered Russell Wilson for the top pick because they wanted to take Josh Allen.
Right.
There's also convenient. You wanted to take Josh Allen at 1 after he's become an MVP.
There was a story that the Browns wanted to mock the idea of Carson Wentz. They knew he was a phony, even though Carson Wentz had, whatever. There's all these revisionist stories are you take them for what they're worth. Sal, Laviska Shenault is the newest addition for the Buffalo Bills. We check in with you quickly here. I know you've got stuff going on later today. So what do you think? Kick returner, body, is this a great example of you shouting to the rooftops they have to have 90 people on the team?
It is one of those examples. I wrote a quick tweet last night. I was at an event last night, and I actually was there and when this all happened. So by the time I got home, I put some thoughts down and I tweeted out. And after thinking about it, I said, listen, there's a couple things about this. To me, this also, it goes to the fact that there is very likely, I shouldn't say very likely, it's very possible the kickoff goes to the 35, the touchbacks. And I think teams are planning for that, guys. This is a really good kick returner. Yes, they have Brandon Codrington. They also have 2 kick returners on the field at the same time, the way they run it. And he has never returned a punt in the NFL or college, so it's not like he's going to be there for a punt returns, but I think this is we need a guy because there's going to be, kickoffs were way up last year, pretty far up. I think it was like up by like 30%. And if they move it to the 35, they're going to be up a lot more. And let's remember, Sean McDermott's on the competition committee. He might see this coming and says, listen, we have to have a guy, in case this happens, we're going to have a guy to make sure that we're in a good spot on the roster to be able to return kicks. So to me, this really starts with the kickoff touchback on kickoffs, moving to the 35-yard line, the possibility of that. From there, it's depth wide receiver. Hey, a guy that actually had a good first 2 years in the NFL. After that, really had a big drop-off, hasn't really done much and had much production. But I always say, as you guys know, you never know. It feels like maybe the Bills liked him coming out of college and they didn't draft him. And, you wait down the road, he's available. Okay, we really like his skill set. Same regime. Let's bring him in here. And yes, Jeremy, 90 guys, right? They're bringing 90 guys to camp. There's going to be types of guys like this all over. There's no guarantees even making the roster.
Right. So do you not really see him as a huge threat then to Codrington's roster spot eventually because of him never returning a punt?
Exactly. I don't see him at all a threat to Codrington's roster spot. The Bills have a very good punt return in Brandon Codrington, and his backup is basically Khalil Shakir, right? I mean, right. So no, he's never done it. So if Codrington's not on the roster, who's the punt returner? So like I said, you could have maybe Daquan Hardy suddenly shows up and is amazing at it. You say, wow, he's actually a better corner as well. So there's no guarantees with Codrington, but I think he's pretty safe right now. I just think this is more of a hey, we got a guy here that can help us in the new dynamic kickoff. And we can use him as a depth wide receiver. Here's the other thing I noticed, too. I see everybody trying to figure this out, like we're doing here. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that we all get a little too far in the weeds at this time of year trying to pigeonhole guys into what their role is, right? I mean, so much is going to happen between now and the end of training camp. There's going to be a lot of guys. There's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be scheme tweaks. There's going to be a lot of things that happen between now and then. I think we all have to kind of always remember, like, it's March 14th. We don't need to pigeonhole guys and say, this is where that guy's playing and who he's pushing off the roster come September.
Sal, you were there yesterday as we heard some of the free agents talk about signing here, Josh Palmer, Joey Bosa. Any big takeaways on the message from those guys? Because, I mean, if anything, we might be able to get a window into what the team told them about their roles, about what they expect out of them this year, and what expectations are for this team this year.
Well, I think the money quote was from Joey Bosa when he said that Josh Allen texted him and said, if we do what we set out to do, we can be immortalized in this town. And, Bosa talked a lot about this point of his career and trying to win and wanting to win and coming to a football town, a football culture, and it's all about football here. And it's going to be about nothing else but trying to win football games. So, if you're looking for any messages, the message is we're full steam ahead. And we're trying to win right now, and we're right there. And we're going to, bring in guys who understand that that's the mission this year. And I think that was very, very loud and clear from Joey Bosa and from other players who spoke yesterday. Bosa is when I had Fernando Ramirez on the Extra Point show the other day. He covers the Chargers. He said he has a very dry sense of humor. He talks. He's funny sometimes, but just kind of the way he talks. And he was exactly on point, right? It was interesting just talking to him. He's Jake Kumarow's cousin. Don't know if guys know that. Touchdown Jesus. We talked to him. We asked him about that. I asked him about that. His dad played for the Dolphins in the late 80s against Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and those guys back then. So we talked a little bit about that. Did you guys know he had an appearance in Game of Thrones? He was an extra in an episode. He said he flew out to Belfast for that. I said, so you weren't trying out for the role of Jon Snow? He said, no, they didn't have any armor big enough to fit him. So again, like just a little example, right? He's like kind of keeping on your toes. That was, I think, the message. Josh Palmer was very introspective, kind of softer spoken, really thoughtful in his responses, though. Interesting, he grew up in Canada, wasn't a big hockey fan. He said he is a Raptors fan. Now he's playing for the team that's owned by McGrady and partly owned, of course, minority owners, McGrady and Vince Carter. And ironically enough, he did move to the United States, Josh Palmer, and him and Joey Bosa went to the same high school, St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. He actually was teammates with Nick Bosa in high school.
Okay, I was looking real quick what episode he appeared on in Game of Thrones. There's a story that it took him a week to find his own cameo because it was one of the battle scenes. So there's 1,000 people probably in the screen. Oh, yeah.
But he said one of the soldiers fighting or something. If you freeze frame it, Joe, he said you turn, you see his nose. That's what he said.
That's funny. That's funny.
Okay.
All right. Well, Sal, what's next order of business? More free agents, right? I mean, like there's still names out there.
Yeah.
When do we expect to hear from Bean? Anybody anytime soon? Is there any sort of addressing? I know that you don't actually get done in free agency, but maybe next week. Because I'd want to.
Yeah. There was a.
I would just want to know about Cooper and Douglas, and if there are conversations still to be had there.
So there was a thought that we would hear from Brandon Beane yesterday, but that never materialized. So it'll be at some point soon. Maybe it's going to be today. Michael Hoyt is going to speak today, apparently. He's the only one we didn't hear from yesterday other than Darrington Evans. I think the other piece of news yesterday that impacts all of this is we learned Josh Allen's contract details. Over the Cap has them, tweeted them out. I, for one, am stunned that his cap only went down $3 million.
Yeah, me too.
I really thought it would be a lot more. Now, that said, they've already done a lot of the things they needed to do, right? I mean, it means that they don't have as much money as I thought they would have or open up, but it's not like they can't do the things they wanted to do because they already did those things. But it does show that going forward, you're not as flexible as maybe you thought you'd be. But we also learned, in lieu of that, over the last few days, that Ed Oliver had restructured his deal and they freed up $10 million. So that helps a lot as well. So you add that to Josh, that's $13 million. So they still are doing the things they need to do. But you're right, Jeremy, there are other things. And let's remember, anytime you sign a player now, it's the top 51 rule. If a guy like Damar Hamlin signs for $2 million. All he's really counting on your salary cap right now is probably about 1.1, maybe 1.2. I think it's about 1.1 because the cutoff line for the top 51 is like $900,000. So you have to just take the difference. So really, you got to always do the math on these things and how they work. And I'm sure that we're gonna hear some more moves. We'll see. Maybe they could still figure out a way to open up some more space. But we don't know what's going on at corner 2. I think that is a really, really big spot to focus on right now, to be honest.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. A quick check-in on the Bills before we hit the weekend. Sal, enjoy the weekend. Some nice weather on the way, and we'll talk next week.
You got it, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, Sal Capaccio on our Western Hotline.